Hello Assassins, this is Gakudan for the ones who came before, and welcome. 3 months time ago now, after 2 delays in one of the most intense and controversial marketing campaigns in gaming history, the highly anticipated Assassin's Creed Shadows was finally released, at last taking us to a fan favorite location over many years. Maybe not against all odds, it quickly turned out a massive success, ultimately having one of the best releases in the history of the franchise, reaching 1 million players in less than 24 hours, that number only growing exponentially. Despite this and the critical acclaim though, it is no secret a lot was hanging on this game for Ubisoft, the future of the very company itself possibly having been decided by it. This was mostly the result of a heavily financially disappointing 2024, plummeting stock prices and a potential company buyout, but the perception of the studio among fans and the public is not what it used to be either, after years of beloved flagship franchises undergoing heavy change, internal conflicts, and more. So now that the fateful new installment of the studio's most iconic franchise turned out a massive success after all, what is next for the company and how can they rise up again to their former glory? We will be exploring this in the following video, diving into the future of their flagship franchises, other outlets, fan relations, and more. As mentioned, 2024 was one of, if not the most financially disappointing year for Ubisoft ever, with both major releases of theirs that year heavily underperforming. The return to the golden age of piracy in Skull and Bones, and a new adventure in the galaxy far, far away in Star Wars Outlaws. To this day, both games have only sold around 1 million copies, which may necessarily not sound like a small number, but for a AAA studio of that size is. But were these two titles even necessary and the right output? One was a game that ultimately felt like nothing more than a failed second crack at what is one of the company's most successful and iconic titles even 12 years later, 2013's Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Secondly, should Ubisoft even have taken on a brand like Star Wars? Something which has already proven super successful in recent years with another studio, EA, 2019's Jedi Fallen Order and the 2023 Survivor sequel, proving some of the best and most beloved Star Wars games since the days of Battlefront 2 20 years ago. If Ubisoft wants to avoid sales fiascos like this again, one obvious and easy move would potentially be as simple as this. Drop one-off games like these two so-called failures and instead continually focusing on their key franchises that remain iconic and always only seem to get bigger. Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and some Clancy's. Additionally, if not already, give up on franchises that once were great and promising, but dug themselves into the ground with the years. Best example being Watch Dogs, a franchise that started out with a bang, in a way being a new version of Grand Theft Auto, but with hacking, making for a fun twist and unique new experience. While its 2016 follow-up more or less performed as it should and was met with critical acclaim, for some it was also missing an array of the elements that made the original great, making players, including myself, kind of fall off. By the time the third installment, Legion, was announced, many players just didn't really care, simply said, possibly also giving the, shall we call it, aimless direction of the game, for example being able to play as any NPC in it, signaling a lack of narrative. Disappointing sales numbers aside, Ubisoft's relationships with players and fans has taken many hits in recent years due to a number of reasons. From solely gaming perspective, the two mentioned beloved flagship franchises underwent stylistic changes to different degrees in the late 10s, clearly not to everyone's liking. Assassin's Creed infamously took a more loose RPG-oriented approach with 2017's Origins, and 2021's Far Cry 6 were missing elements that made previous installments as iconic as they were, survival and skill progression being at the very core of them. Following AZ Origins that introduced this different style, an array of fans were begging for a return to roots, only for the next two games to crank the RPG elements up to 11, almost completely ditching the classic Assassins vs Templars aspects and narrative. Despite its perhaps smaller scale, and some lore elements from this new era being carried over, 2023's AC Mirage was as much a return to roots as possible, bringing back classic Assassins vs Templars, improved stealth, and a gameplay formula reminiscent of the classic 2007 original. And then once again, the new Assassin's Creed Shadows reintroduced some of these RPG-leaning elements. Can the AC franchise survive with all this push and pull? For one period of time more or less completely ditching the elements that made it what it is, then having it make a comeback, then for it all to come to a mix. Sure, games and franchises need to evolve, and a good example of a game that went against everyone's expectations yet turned out a massive success, if not one of the all-time greats of video game history overall, was Black Flag. But when criticisms begins to outweigh the positives, it changes company dynamics. Is it a sign Ubisoft needs to start listening to player feedback more than has been the case in recent years, and set aside any artistic decisions that may not turn out as thought? At this point, when AC fans say they want a more linear story and classic Assassins vs Templars, it's because they want it and to stay. When Far Cry fans criticize Far Cry 6 of feeling overloaded and long, lacking skill progression, and a terrifying and deep villain on the level of Vas Montenegro, they meant it. Another noteworthy aspect of this is following trends. Everyone in the gaming industry does it, Rockstar Games often having set the standard with every new game of theirs, more or less shaping the open world genre single-handedly. A wide array of elements from the first couple of AC games can be traced back to GTA. Far Cry was inspired by classic first-person shooter games but put its twist on it. And when a game in 2015 came out called The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, it revolutionized the RPG genre. Hence, it makes sense Ubisoft would take note of that and try to put their twist on it. As we all know though, this mostly only caused polarization amongst fans, and Ubisoft seemed to fail at capturing the RPG feeling in the same way. Despite the success of The Witcher 3, was that really meant to be the game that would lay out the blueprint for the next decade of gaming? Everyone trying to replicate that style since it clearly worked on one of the most iconic games of the 10s. Since that, there have been many other landmark games that didn't follow that RPG formula. So why Ubisoft still clinging onto a blueprint that was last trending 10 years ago now? One wouldn't necessarily know it, but for years Ubisoft have had a television division, the CEO of being Yves Guillemot's brother, Gérard. In recent years, their most popular output has probably been producing the Apple TV Plus original comedy show Mythic Quest, which despite recent cancellation ran for 4 successful seasons over 5 years to critical and fan acclaim. A number of projects based on Ubisoft titles are currently also in development, from Tom Clancy's The Division live-action film set to star Jake Gyllenhaal and Jessica Chastain, and to be directed by David Leitch, Nova John Wick, Deadpool 2, and Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw among others, a Just Dance and Rabbids project, and of course the Netflix Assassin's Creed live-action series. But will these films and shows prove successful, and can this TV division do enough to keep the company afloat? The Assassin's Creed series is highly anticipated among fans, and recently announced its writers' room lineup, including several writers and producers who have worked on some of the most high-profile shows in recent years. Otherwise, much still isn't known about any of these upcoming projects, and only time will tell as to their success a lot potentially could be hanging on. Despite anticipation of mixed reviews from fans, Ubisoft Television's first big film, 2016's Assassin's Creed, wasn't necessarily a success, mostly receiving negative reviews among critics and underperforming at the box office. But there is always room for improvement, and the Tom Clancy project could turn the tide. Additionally, we live in a time where the video game adaptation curse has at last mostly been lifted, with shows like The Last of Us for HBO and Fallout for Amazon receiving almost nothing but praise. So if executed right, Ubisoft Television's projects in development have the potential to take the company to completely new heights. Last but not least, Ubisoft has a great deal of internal fixing and healing to do. After years of internal scandals and their handling off, massive layoffs, rumors of toxic work culture, and more. Many probably remember the summer of 2020, where a dark side of the gaming industry as a whole was exposed, Ubisoft being hit hard, with beloved community icons of many years inside the company finding themselves with heavy allegations of sexual misconduct made against them. This was probably the proper beginning of the mistrust towards the company among many, that's then only grown with the years. About a year later, it was revealed that little if anything had really been done internally to handle this conflict, once again enraging and saddening many fans. As a result of Ubisoft's mentioned tightening financial situation, in the last year alone, hundreds of employees have also been let go, following the closure of multiple Ubisoft studios in an attempt to cut costs and stabilize the company. Last year, the online game Axe Defiant was infamously shut down, causing just under 300 people to lose their jobs. In January this year, 3 more studios, Leamington, Düsseldorf, and Stockholm, were also shut down, resulting in an additional 200 people being let go. This could be the start of a dangerous pattern. The company does indeed need to stabilize to keep its studios up and running and people's livelihood intact, also maximizing work and company efficiency. Finally, Following the announcement of Assassin's Creed Shadows last year and the controversies that followed, rumors started circulating of toxic company work culture and then prioritizing DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, over hiring the most competent workers. While Ubisoft never made any direct comments on this nor confirmed or denied anything, comments made by AC Shadow's senior writer, as well as a photo of the diverse team working on the game, as well as statements put out from Ubisoft overall, could be interpreted the wrong way. Whether anyone working on the game were hired directly for their skills or just to meet so-called diversity quotas, controversies like this are best avoided in the future. All this aside, there is no doubt parts of the AC Shadows promotional campaign were actually controversial, insensitive, and a result of bad company management. One notable example of this was the Yasuke action figure with a one-legged Torii gait, which could be seen as a mockery of the iconic Sano Shrine in Nagasaki that was destroyed following its destruction by a nuclear bomb in 1945 after World War II, a deep trauma in collective Japanese culture and history. Overall, Ubisoft have a lot of work to do if they want to fix their company and restore it to one of the leading elite video game studios it once was, putting out hit after hit, making big money, and helping setting the standard for the video game industry. How this is going to be accomplished, we don't know, if anyone really does, if there is one formula for it. By redirecting focus to hit franchises that, despite changes and criticisms, only seem to get bigger, still accumulating new players, and dropping one-off games that are likely to turn out fiascos, getting Ubisoft Television up and running like never before, keeping relationships with fans healthy and alive, and doing everything they can to internally heal, it is certainly possible they can go a long way. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think Ubisoft can rise up to their former glory again? And how do you think this can be achieved? Be sure to let us know in the comments, and stay tuned for more videos like this. I have been Gakudan for the ones who came before. Stay safe and active, assassins. Till next time.